All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Or welcome if it is the first time that you're visiting my YouTube channel. My name is Davood Gozli. Thank you for being here, for your time and attention. It is December 27th, 2024. So if you're watching this video close to the time that I'm recording and posting it, I hope you're having a happy and relaxing holiday season. I hope you had a good Christmas and heading for a happy new year as well. One of the things that I've done on my channel in the past couple of years is discussing some of the works of Byung-Chul Han, the Korean-born German philosopher, essayist, teacher of philosophy. And I decided to work my way through his books in a chronological order. I don't think I have stayed in the chronological order as much as I had planned initially, but I have so far discussed about 10 or so of his books. And this video is also inspired by Byung-Chul Han, but it is not about a book written by him. It is about a book about him. So it is called, this book that we are going to talk about. It is Byung-Chul Han, A Critical Introduction. And it is co-written by three authors, Steven Knepper, Ethan Stoneman, and Robert Wyllie. And the book, this volume, belongs to a series of books that Polity publishes. The series is called Key Contemporary Thinkers. And it's an exciting series. I have just a few of them. And among the ones that I own, I have read maybe 2.5. I really liked the one on Francois Laruelle, written by Anthony Paul Smith. There is one on Jean-Francois Lyotard, written by James Williams. Herman Paul has one book in this series on Hayden White. Neil Gascoigne has written the book on Richard Rorty, and so on and so forth. I think what makes this volume special is that it is devoted to a thinker who is living, who's still alive, and relatively, I would say relatively young compared to the other people on this list. A list of people who have books devoted to them in the Key Contemporary Thinkers series. The one person that jumps out as being close in age to Byung-Chul Han is Judith Butler. Maybe I'm wrong, but Byung-Chul Han is, I think, younger. So a relatively young key contemporary thinker who has been recognized as making important contributions to our understanding of our current situation that is dominated by late neoliberal capitalism, the neoliberal order, digital technologies, digital media, and a culture of entrepreneurship and preoccupation with our profiles. A different way of saying that is self-entrepreneurship. The book has 6 main chapters, and each author has written 2 chapters. So the author's contributions are separate. They're kept separate. I'll say more on that in a moment. So 6 chapters plus an introduction and a coda at the tail end of the book. Okay, so the other thing that makes this volume special is that it is co-authored by people coming from different academic traditions or disciplines. I don't know what I mean when I say tradition. Different disciplines. So Ethan Stoneman is a professor of rhetoric and media. Robert Wyllie is a professor of political science. And Steven Knepper is professor of English, rhetoric, and humanistic studies. Professor Knepper is also the author of this book that I still haven't read, called Wonder Strikes. Subtitle is Approaching Aesthetics and Literature with William Desmond. And Steven Knepper is also the editor of an online journal called New Verse Review, a journal of lyric and narrative poetry, which I follow. I keep track of. So 3 authors coming from different disciplines. That's really important. Why? Because every discipline has its own a network of concepts that a person belonging to a discipline, if you belong to a discipline like political science, you have these key concepts, key words. And those keywords are connected to each other in a particular way. And they're connected to questions and maybe a set of frameworks, possible frameworks for your works, for your projects. That means when you approach a new question, when you approach a new thinker, you situate that new thing within your existing network of concepts, questions, concerns. So that means with this volume, we have slightly different ways of situating Han and Han's work. Different, let's drop the word slightly. Different ways of situating and contextualizing and making sense of Byung-Chul Han, coming to terms with Byung-Chul Han from these three different perspectives. The book gives an overview of Han's writing. It includes, very importantly, a referenced discussion of some of Han's earlier writings that are not translated to English, including his first book on Heidegger, titled Heidegger's Heart. And another book, which I think relatively recent, called Praise of the Earth, which discusses gardening and is somewhat autobiographical. So an overview, that's one goal. Another aim of the book is to show more connections, more similarities or relevance between connections between Han's thought and the works and thoughts of other thinkers, contemporary and past. For example, in the chapter on Eros, Steven Knepper brings a reference to the works of a psychoanalyst and writer Anne Dufour-Mantell, which I found really interesting and exciting because you get to see that the horizon is wider than you thought. There are more people. It's like discovering that you have new potential friends, or not even potential. It's like discovering that you have more friends than you thought. More friends or more people who share your concerns, who have shared your concerns and have discussed it. So you can join them. You can join them and read their thoughts. So this task in this book, this aspect of the book was something that I really appreciated, because especially if you are a student of philosophy, if you are a person who is getting into philosophy through Byung-Chul Han, I get sometimes comments on my videos that seem to come from the mindset of maybe overstating Han's uniqueness and specialness. I mean, we should avoid that for any thinker that we engage with. It's always, the contribution is always the contribution of a history and a tradition that a person belongs to, even when they are reacting against that tradition. Anyways, let's not get into that topic. So it's exciting that we get introduced to other relevant thinkers. Similar to what I said about Knepper and Anne Dufour-Mantell, in the Digital Psychopolitics chapter, Ethan Stoneman discusses the relevance of Willem Flusser and says that the work of Willem Flusser should be considered alongside Han in a way that diverges and extends Han's own treatment of Flusser. Similarly, Robert Wyllie discusses connections to Rousseau and Merleau-Ponty that were, for me, very helpful in clarifying Han's position within a wider context. So in general, they broaden the scope of our attention in terms of history of ideas, philosophy, media theory, political theory. And one more thing I'll say before getting into the text. This work is necessarily, this is not a criticism, because any work that belongs to this series of key contemporary thinkers, secondary, so-called secondary book, secondary source, a treatment of another author, another thinker. A work like this is necessarily more controlled, and it is more, it's calmer. To borrow the binary, the Nietzschean binary of Apollonian and Dionysian, this work is relatively more Apollonian, and it has to be because of its task. It's necessarily more Apollonian compared to Han's own writing, which is more Dionysian. It is more exciting and charming because it has an uncontrolled energy in it that is not as concerned with being precise. It allows itself to wander in directions and maybe wander a little bit, sometimes too far, but that's okay. That's part of the character of what Han is doing. Maybe it's essential feature of it. So for that reason, the book might appeal more to academic readers, but not necessarily. I mean, I'm outside of academia, and I enjoyed the book. I found it very helpful. If you have a serious interest in Byung-Chul Han, then you got to be Apollonian at some point with him. You got to take your relationship to the next level, and that way of engagement that is more concerned with an accurate representation, more truthful representation of his body of work, a more sober engagement with him, as well as the other not so sober engagement, which is also good. So since the publication of this book, 2 new Byung-Chul Han books have been published in English, and maybe more this year. I don't know. So the 2 new books that have come out since this, written by Byung-Chul Han, they are The Crisis of Narration and The Spirit of Hope. And especially The Spirit of Hope is something that I'm hoping to read with my small reading group, because it touches on the themes of community, being together, thinking together, forming connections, and those things being related to hope, having hope and living with hope, as opposed to living with fear or despair, as Gabriel Marcel would say. Okay, so if you've had enough by this point, and if you just want to go and check out the book and read it for yourself, feel free to do so. For the rest of this video, I'm going to spend a bit of time with the book and read with you, because you see I have these stickers, and I'd like to. Gosh, I want to remove these colorful stickers because they're, as a serious man, I would be embarrassed to have these colorful stickers attached to my book. So I want to remove them, and before I remove them, I'd like to read these passages, because I selected the passages for this video, and maybe I have selected too many for the time that we have, but I'll try to read as many of them as I can. In the order of appearances. And I'm going to jump around. So when I read and pause, the next thing will not appear, it will not be the next thing that shows up in the book. So I'm going to be jumping from page to page. But for the most part, I'm going to go from beginning to middle, close to end of the book. I have a feeling that I'm forgetting something that I wanted to say, but it might come to me. Okay, so from the very first page, we read, Han's persistent concern is that late modern individuals exhaust themselves in their projects because they are losing the attitudes, practices, and even conceptual vocabulary to encounter what is other to them. Okay, let me change the orientation of this lamp, reading lamp. See. You see, I have to compromise to put it somewhere where I can read the page easily, and also my face doesn't show up like a horror movie character. This is from page 3, talking about the aims of the book. We read, this is the first book-length introduction to Han to appear in English, and the first comprehensive introduction to his philosophy, political theory, media theory, and aesthetics in any language. It has 3 main purposes. The first is to offer an overview of his primary overarching themes. We trace interpretive through lines from his first book, Heidegger's Heart, published in 1996, to his most recent book, Vita Contemplativa, published in English in 2024. These connect Han's philosophical interests in boredom, death, freedom, friendliness, and otherness. In the main theoretical category in the burnout society, the positive violence of self exploitation. A second purpose of the book is to put Han in conversation with a wider range of interlocutors. Occasionally, we propose artists, filmmakers, novelists, and poets working in English who seem to be similar to Han's continental touchstones. We also introduce many new interlocutors by situating Han's work within or alongside the English language scholarly literature in our respective fields. A third purpose of this book is to deepen the scholarly discussion of Han. His brief, clearly written books are more approachable than those of many other contemporary continental thinkers. His emphasis on accessibility leads some critics to dismiss his writing as pop philosophy. Han's penchant for overstatement, sweeping assessments, and stark oppositions can feed into this critique. While we register criticisms of Han, some from others and some of our own, we seek responses in his body of work. Okay, jumping to page 12. Getting to the themes of the book, like burnout. More people are moving into jobs where boundless information replaces a relationship to things. Achievement becomes vague and, as Jenny Odell suggests, a matter of individual goal setting with no ends in sight. The achievement subject becomes the product of her or his work. Everyone from entrepreneurs to gamers to children trying to fit in at school must make themselves better information hunters. Han's diagnosis is from page 25. Han's diagnosis of autocompulsion in achievement society, which presents itself as freedom, is perhaps more closely aligned with Rousseau than with any other theorist. Like Han, Rousseau is concerned firstly with self-tyranny and secondly with tyranny over nature as a whole. And he examines what in man's psyche makes him his own and nature's tyrant. Han worries that an unrealistic ego ideal invites us to self-exploitation, and this seems closer to the vain self-conception of Rousseau's divided bourgeois than to any more precise use of the term in Freud or other psychoanalytic thinker. Yet, Han mentions Rousseau only briefly in his works, including a critical comment on his critique of hypocrisy as an early step towards transparency as a moral imperative. Nonetheless, Han's concern takes us back to the Rousseauian origins of continental political thought, and his most recent book, Vita Contemplativa, draws more deeply on romantic thinkers influenced by Rousseau. So it's really nice and good and interesting to now be able to go back to Rousseau and read Rousseau in light of Han. Page 27. Hubertus Tellenbach, had already found that individuals who identify too strongly with social norms are more likely to be chronically fatigued. The original attempt to pathologize burnout points to the internalization of norms and social pressures. The Ehrenberg-Tellenbach account of depression may be true of obedience subjects in disciplinary society, Han would allow, but it must be updated to explain similar symptoms in exhausted achievement subjects. Okay, jumping to world-friendliness, moods for deep cosmopolitanism. This is from page 44. In Heidegger's Heart, Han challenges Heidegger's phenomenology of boredom and asks whether boredom is not a mood where we are friendly to things and others. A boredom beyond restlessness, one where the ego relaxes, becomes the mood for freedom, the freedom to think without a primordial compulsion to order one's experiences. Han's beginning in philosophy cannot be understood without reference to Heidegger's later writings. But Merleau-Ponty may offer the better introduction to Han, since his idea of freedom moves afield from the Christian German idealist or Heideggerian passivity, where God or being alone bestows freedom. Merleau-Ponty and Han are more open to the suggestion that anyone or everything can bestow freedom. They do not necessarily await a destiny that appears beneath the appearances of things, as Heidegger does. Page 49. Han shows ways that a godless world and a world where people do not dwell in one place may still be a spiritual world. He offers a spirituality for people who live anywhere, for wanderers who dwell nowhere in particular, and practices to affirm the inhabited multiform world. The passage that I read before reminded me of Suzanne Sontag's opening sentence in Styles of Radical Will. She writes, every era has to reinvent the project of spirituality for itself. Every era. And reinvention of spirituality, invention, the invention has a mother, and usually we call that necessity. Necessity. And the necessity might have something to do with our inability to belong as much as we used to. So spirituality in a world where people wander, people cannot dwell in any one particular place, and the practices that can go with that form of life. We are still with Robert Wyllie's portion of the book, the first two essays, the first two chapters. This is from page 60. Deep cosmopolitanism offers an anywhere politics, or anywhere politics, or better yet, wherever politics, as opposed to the everywhere politics where internet users can express their will immediately on any subject in any country now that politics is supplemented into information. Okay, now the middle two chapters by Ethan Stoneman. This is from page 105, called Digital Psychopolitics Toward the Total Control Society. For Han, the crux of psychopolitical subterfuge is the digital instrumentalization of freedom into a means of coercion and compulsion. Psychopolitics is thus shorthand for digital psychopolitics, the technical mode of governmentality that, according to Han, is taking over the social behavior of the masses by laying hold of and steering the unconscious logic that governs them. The possibility that one can be on and connected everywhere, at all times, conceals the expectation that one ought to be, thereby serving as a switch for the transformation of allo-exploitation into auto-exploitation. Han's reasoning here seems to follow the technical axiom identified by Jacques Ellul, that if a machine can produce a given result, it must be used to full capacity. A tendency which only intensifies when there is an environmental inducement, as in the case of neoliberalism. Page 111. Perhaps the most conspicuous example of self-entrepreneurship, which also serves as one of Han's preferred examples of digital surveillance, is the notion of the quantified self, combining the positivity of self-exploitation with the transparency of self-illumination. The quantified self refers to the quest to instrument the body, monitor its behavior, and derive actionable insights from these soundings. Soundings. Okay, jumping to the chapter on duration, finding time. Um, on page 134, we read, "In this world of commodified and restlessly pursued attention, contemplation becomes a mode of resistance, a way to fortify ourselves against the intrusions that new power structures make into our attention. Contemplation is crucial for art, philosophy, and politics. It gives one the thinking space to parse out what matters and to discover unexpected connections. It gives thought time to mature." Han turns to Marcel Proust, who meditates on how both dreams and waking contemplation allow unbidden memories to resurface in epiphanic fashion. Such sleep, like profound boredom, is a state of deep relaxation ready to receive such gifts. Contemplative silence, Han holds, enables us to say something unheard of. In contrast with frenetic activity in which one continually reacts, contemplation prepares one to act decisively or deliberately. Contemplation makes it possible to act at the right time in the right way for the right reasons. I think a tacit reference to Aristotle. Contemplation makes action responsible. It allows us to respond rather than react, and to attend to others rather than to automatically advance our own projects. Okay, I think these are going to be the last passages I read. Yeah. Steven Knepper is asking, is there a constructive upshot to Han's turn to ritual? When he discusses contemplative practices elsewhere, he clearly offers a way for his readers to counter contemporary ills. This is less clear in his work on ritual. Han does not seem to believe that a religious revival is imminent in the West, and he is not directly preaching one. His study does, however, invite its readers to take a second and more appreciative look at living religious traditions. As is often the case, he unsettles ideological complacency. If the disappearance of ritual challenges the left to look past emancipation narratives that are too simple, it challenges the right to attend to capitalism's role in the destruction of ritual and community, and to be open to the new. I think that's good. A sample of writing in the 6 chapters by the authors Steven Knepper, Ethan Stoneman, and Robert Wyllie. Byung-Chul Han, A Critical Introduction. Thanks for watching.